The ring felt heavier than it should have. It burned in my pocket like a secret too powerful to hold, like a fragile hope that could shatter with one wrong word. My palms were damp, my heart pounding so loud I was certain everyone in the park could hear it. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head, but now that she stood in front of me beneath the fading gold of the evening sky, every practiced sentence disappeared. All that remained was fear and love. Before we step into what happened next, I want to ask you something. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the kind of love that grows quietly through storms, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who believes in love, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that hope is still alive in the world. I met her on a day when my life felt like it was falling apart. It was raining that morning, the kind of relentless drizzle that seeps into your bones and mirrors the heaviness inside your chest. I had just left another failed job interview. My savings were thinning. My father's medical bills were stacked neatly on the kitchen counter like silent accusations. I felt like I was drowning in responsibilities I wasn't strong enough to carry. I ducked into a small neighborhood cafe to escape the rain and my own thoughts. That was where I first saw her. She was sitting by the window, sunlight filtering through gray clouds and landing gently on her hair. She wasn't dressed in anything extraordinary, but there was something extraordinary about her presence. She was reading a book, her brow slightly furrowed in concentration, occasionally smiling at something on the page. The world around her seemed quieter. I don't believe in love at first sight. I believe in timing. And the timing of her entering my life felt intentional, almost like mercy. When the barista accidentally spilled coffee near her table, I rushed forward with napkins. It was a small thing, insignificant even, but she looked up at me with gratitude that felt too warm for such a simple act. That was our beginning, not fireworks, not fate written in the stars. Just two strangers sharing a moment of kindness on a rainy day. Her name was Aisha. Our conversation started casually. We spoke about books, about the city, about how rain makes everything feel both lonely and romantic at the same time. She laughed easily, but there was depth behind her laughter, like someone who had known disappointment and chosen hope anyway. Weeks passed. We began meeting often, sometimes intentionally, sometimes by coincidence. She told me she worked as a teacher at a small private school. I told her about my struggles to find stable work after my company downsized. She listened without judgment. That was rare. Most people offer advice or pity. She offered understanding. But life wasn't gentle with either of us. My father's health worsened. Hospital visits became routine. Nights were sleepless. I stopped going to the cafe. I stopped answering messages. I withdrew into myself because I felt ashamed. What kind of man invites someone into a life filled with uncertainty in hospital corridors? One evening, after weeks of silence, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find her standing there, holding a small container of homemade soup. She didn't scold me for disappearing. She didn't demand explanations. She simply said she had been worried. That night, she sat beside my father's hospital bed and spoke to him gently about her students and their funny classroom stories. My father, who had barely smiled in days, laughed softly. I watched her from across the room and felt something shift inside me. Love isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with dramatic music. It reveals itself in hospital rooms, in shared silences, in soup carried up narrow staircases. Still, I resisted. I told myself she deserved someone more stable, someone whose future wasn't built on uncertainty. I began pushing her away, making excuses, canceling plans. She noticed. Of course she did. A woman like her always notices. One evening she asked me what I was so afraid of. I didn't answer honestly. I said I needed time. The truth was I was terrified of not being enough. Months went by. I found a modest job at a small marketing firm. The pay wasn't extraordinary, but it was steady. My father's condition stabilized. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. And yet, she felt distant. I realized that in trying to protect her from my chaos, I had built walls between us. She had stopped reaching out as often. Her messages were shorter. Her laughter, when we met, carried a trace of caution. That's when I understood something painful. Love requires courage, not perfection. I began showing up again. Not with grand gestures, but with consistency. I attended her school's annual function and watched her guide her students with pride shining in her eyes. I met her mother, who sized me up quietly but kindly. I helped her repaint her small apartment living room on a Sunday afternoon, both of us covered in white paint and laughing like children. Slowly, trust returned. Then came the setback I hadn't expected. She received a job offer from another city. A better school, better pay, more opportunity. She told me about it one evening as we sat on a park bench, the same park where children chased pigeons and elderly couples walked hand in hand. She said she didn't know what to do. I wanted to say, stay for me. But I knew love isn't possession. Love is wanting someone's growth, even if it hurts you, so I told her she should take it. The silence that followed was heavy. She looked at me carefully, searching for something in my face. Maybe she was hoping I would fight for her. Maybe she was waiting for me to say the words I had buried for months. But I stayed silent. She left 2 weeks later. The city felt emptier after that. The cafe window seat remained unoccupied. The rain, when it came, felt colder. I told myself I had done the right thing. I told myself she would be happier there. But happiness without her felt incomplete. We spoke occasionally on the phone. Our conversations were polite, safe. She told me about her new students. I told her about work. We avoided the subject that sat between us like an unspoken question. One night, months later, I found myself walking past the jewelry shop near my office. I stopped in front of the display window. Rings shimmered under bright lights, small circles of promise and possibility. And I knew. Fear had controlled me long enough. The next weekend I boarded a bus to her city. The journey was long and restless. My mind replayed every possible outcome. What if she had moved on? What if she no longer felt the same? What if I was too late? When I reached her apartment building, my heart pounded like it had that first rainy day. I stood outside for several minutes, rehearsing words that refused to stay in order. She opened the door before I could knock twice. Surprise flashed across her face, followed by something softer. We walked to a nearby park, quieter than the one in our city. The evening sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Children's laughter echoed faintly in the distance. I reached into my pocket and felt the ring. My hands trembled. I told her I had been afraid of not being enough, afraid of failing her, afraid of promising something I wasn't certain I could deliver. I told her I had tried to protect her by pushing her away, but all I had done was risk losing the best thing in my life. And then, with my voice shaking and my heart exposed, I nervously asked, "Will you be my wife?" For a second, the world seemed to pause. She looked at me with eyes filled not with shock, but with warmth. A smile slowly spread across her face, the same smile from that rainy cafe, only deeper now, wiser. She said she had thought I would never ask. Relief crashed over me like a wave. The fear that had lived inside me for so long dissolved into something lighter, something steady. We weren't perfect, we weren't wealthy, our future wasn't mapped out in detail, but we had chosen each other, not out of convenience, not out of desperation, but out of growth. Marriage didn't magically erase challenges. There were bills, disagreements, long work days, moments of exhaustion. But there was also partnership, late-night tea on the balcony, shared dreams about a small house with a garden, quiet gratitude for having someone who stays. Years later, when people ask how I knew she was the one, I don't talk about destiny. I talk about hospital rooms and soup containers. I talk about paint-stained Sundays and bus rides fueled by courage. I talk about the moment I stopped letting fear make my decisions. Love is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone whose imperfections you're willing to stand beside. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone you love or someone you lost, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone special, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. And before we close, I have a special request. Comment the word courage below if you believe love requires bravery. Because in the end, it wasn't the ring that changed my life. It wasn't the perfect timing or the rehearsed words. It was the decision to step forward despite fear. That evening in the park, as she smiled and the sky faded into twilight, I realized something simple yet powerful. Sometimes the most beautiful answers come after the most terrifying questions. And sometimes, the life you're afraid to ask for is the very one waiting patiently for you to be brave enough to claim it.